Most people have a collection of old possessions that they no longer use stored in the attics of their homes. We've bought newer items to replace that old stuff, or we just outgrew them to a point where they're not useful anymore. Beyond sentimental value, most of the objects we keep are pretty much worthless, but now and then some of these objects that we call junk turn out to be highly valuable treasures. Mike Wolf and Frank Fritz are professional antique collectors and are also the host to a popular TV show, American Pickers, from the History Channel. They spend their time traveling across the United States in search of elusive treasures that are worth a ton of money. Well, as they were digging their way on a cluttered loft in Michigan, they found something of extreme value hiding in plain sight. Most of the treasures that they've found come out of ordinary garages and attics. They know that fortunes can be hiding in the most unassuming places. So when they heard about a house in Michigan that needed some raiding, they jumped at the chance of finding new treasures. Since the show first aired in 2010, both collectors have visited tens of houses that were the resting places for some incredible antiques. However, not every home becomes a fortune. In some cases, the hosts have ended up losing thousands of dollars on a deal that went south for them. Once, the duo lost about $8,000 on a train set that turned out to be fake. One of the biggest lessons that Mike and Frank have learned over the years traveling across the country and raiding houses, garages, and storerooms is that looks can be deceiving. Sometimes they got items they thought were worth a fortune when the article was junk, and vice versa. During one of their trips in 2016, Mike and Frank received a tip about a house in Michigan that supposedly contained a plethora of antiques and old stuff that was waiting to be raided. The hosts immediately called Brian, the owner of the house, who gladly welcomed them over. Frank and Mike were completely shocked the moment they walked into Brian's loft. There were unending stacks of boxes in the space. Their excitement was too big to contain. There were much more things in the house than they had anticipated. Both men had a lot of work on their hands, and as fun as their job was, they still had to do an enormous amount of effort to comb through every one of the items in the space. This project could take them hours or even days to complete. Despite the initial host's enthusiasm, after several hours of raiding box after box, they still hadn't found anything of real value. They weren't prone to give up on a hard task, but they were getting a little disappointed. But their guts told them not to give up and continue with the search. Even though the house contained dozens of boxes, Mike was mysteriously drawn to one corner of the house particularly. Through the years, Mike had learned to trust his instincts. It was like they'd taken over and were guiding him where to look. While Mike continued to focus on his corner, Frank let out a cry of excitement. He'd stumbled upon several pearl necklaces, carefully stored in a plastic container. As Frank pulled the necklaces from the plastic containers to appraise them better and get a better sense of the worth of the pearls, Mike saw something inside one of the corner boxes that had been calling to him since they first stopped in. When Mike was capable of lifting the box, he moved it to an open space where he placed it on the floor. As soon as he opened the flaps of the box, his jaw dropped to the floor. He quickly called Frank, who left what he was doing to check on Mike's discovery. Inside the old storage box was a lot of jewelry pieces. There were more pearl necklaces and other accessories such as pendants, bracelets, and earrings just waiting to be found. With the box open, they called Brian and started to negotiate. Surprisingly, he was interested in only a fraction of the total cost. He sold the box of jewels to Frank and Mike for just $50. Brian had no problem at all selling the contents of the box to Mike and Frank for such a low price. After all, those items were only junk to him, and in his opinion, they were taking up too much storage space that he needed. Mike and Frank revealed on the show that if they cleaned all the pieces and put them on auction, the duo could make up to $500 cash. While this deal was a really good one, as they left with a revenue of 90% over their cost, it was nothing close to other fortunes they'd made. In one occasion, the host paid $700 for some old carnival banners that were appraised and then sold for an astounding sum of $5,000. Both men gave enormous thanks to Brian for the good deal he gave them. Excitedly, the man shook hands and headed out. Mike and Frank went straight to get their newly acquired jewelry appraised. Their experience surely proves the saying that one man's trash is another man's treasure.